Hello there. Tonight I welcome you to a world where fresh as a daisy would get you laughed out of the village. You're about to step into the shoes and undergarments of a medieval wanderer, where bathing was rare, smells stuck like insurance labels, and personal hygiene was more rumour than routine. Over the next hour or two, we'll trudge together through fetid streets, chamber pots, and wine-soaked washcloths. Now strap on your stoutest cloak, hold your nose at arm's length, and let's dive in. If you enjoyed tonight's story, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like, subscribe, or maybe comment on where you are listening from. So whether you are getting ready to settle down for the night, looking for a distraction from work or study, or maybe just looking to relax for a while, you found the right place. Quiet the noise of the modern world. Sit back, relax, and we will begin our journey. You awake in a small, dim room with a thatched roof that leaks in places even the mice avoid. The first thing that greets you isn't the gentle dawn light. It's the reek of last night's ale, mingled with the lingering aroma of goat hair and stale porridge. If you imagine a modern wake-up call of coffee brewing or birdsong, think again. Here, it's more like someone whispered bath once in a crowded tavern, and everyone recoiled. In your time, bathing isn't what you see on TV. No bubbles, no rubber duck, and certainly no relaxing jazz playlist. Water is dangerous. Everyone knows that opening your pores lets in disease, plague, bad air, maybe even your uncle's ghost. So you swim in your own oils and strut through town, proud of your natural musk. If someone claims they bathe weekly, you know they're either a monk embracing holy dirt, or a noble with too many servants and not enough sense. Once or twice a year, if you're lucky, you might fill a wooden tub with water heated over the hearth, soak for as long as your tolerance for bugs allows, and, brace yourself, share the same water with your children, spouse, and maybe the dog. By the time the baby climbs in, the tub water is a murky cocktail of soap residue, skin flakes, and who knows what else. Still, everyone loves a bit of family bonding. When nature calls, you answer with a ceramic or wooden chamber pot hidden under the bed. A polite shout, "Good loo," or "Guard loo," alerts any unfortunate pedestrian below that a watery surprise is imminent. If they're unlucky, they're showered with yesterday's brew. Thus, medieval towns double as open-air lavatories, waste dumped directly into streets thicker than mud, reeking under the sun like a biological bake sale gone very wrong. You learn early to hug the walls, sprint through alleys, and pray your boots hold up. Shoe leather is thin. You feel every squish. In winter, it's an icy slush. In summer, a sticky stew. On market days, the flow of blood, fish guts, and who knows what else mingles into a primordial soup. Congratulations. You've signed up for Daily Fear Factor, Medieval Edition. Your outfit, maybe a tunic of coarse wool or linen, is worn until it practically screams for mercy. Washing it means hauling it to a stream, scrubbing with ashes or lye, which doubles as skin peeler, beating it against rocks, and then wringing it until arms ache and fingers go numb. It dries, sort of. Indoors it picks up smoke and dust. Outdoors it risks bird droppings or passing fly swarms. Most folks simply brush off visible dirt, change maybe once a month, and hope for the best. But believe it or not, stench is part of the social fabric. A pungent bouquet could signal the butcher's quarter, a fishmonger's stall, or the tanneries where hides bubble in lime and fermented dog poo. Yes, medieval leather tanning was an olfactory assault of ammonia and rot. If you catch a whiff, you're supposed to cross yourself and move on. Locals adapt. your nose goes numb, and nose blindness becomes a survival skill. Rich folk scatter herbs, lavender or rosemary on straw floors, and throw around herbs to mask the muck. They carry pomanders, little balls of spice and resin on chains, and sniff nervously when the street perfume fails. The beaked plague doctor masks, stuffed with dried flowers, cloves, and whatever smelled good, a stylish attempt to fend off miasma. In reality, they looked ridiculous and offered zero protection. But hey, fashion over function. Medieval mouths were battlefields of decay too. No toothbrushes, no toothpaste, just chewing on twigs, often from the neem or miswak tree, to scrape away crud. Grit-laden bread ground by stone mills left microshards of rock in every bite, abrading enamel like sandpaper. Cavities formed, abscesses festered, and when a tooth began to stink, someone mercilessly yanked it with pliers. No anesthetic, half-hearted prayers optional. Breath, fierce enough to knock out a monk during Vespers. Peppermint, luxury. Chew a clove if you can find one, but it's probably in the noble's pomander. Early on, public bathhouses, called stews, offered tubs for all, men and women together, no privacy screens, water heated by the bucket. Picture a spa crossed with a tavern, cloaked in steam, chatter, wine, and occasionally more scandalous services. The church frowned on them. Moral panic ensued. When the Black Death arrived, baths were blamed for spreading contagion. Bathhouses were shut down in many towns. Suddenly, the one place to scrub was deemed a den of iniquity. Civilization, medieval style. You stagger out of your chamber, blinking at the sunlight, or what passes for sunlight under a perpetual haze of smoke and dust, and make your way to the village square. The locals eye you with a mixture of pity and relief. At least it's not us, they seem to think, catching a whiff of what could only be described as wild boar meets spilled mead. You wave politely and tuck your nose behind your sleeve. Your hair is a battlefield. Lice, those tiny medieval freeloaders, have declared themselves permanent residents, hosting banquets in your scalp. The village barber surgeon offers a $2 haircut and a bottle of lice poison, a dubious mix of vinegar, juniper berries, and salt, applied by slathering it across your head and leaving you to sweat under the sun for hours. You emerge with slightly less hair and a lot more vinegar smell. But the lice, in true plague-spreading spirit, just move next door to your neighbor. If you're wealthy, you pay someone to shave your head completely, leaving you bald and fashion-forward, at least until the sun burns your scalp like a griddle. The less fortunate endure head-scratching marathons, convinced that simply ignoring the problem will starve the lice. You wander down to the river for a drink, cupping your hands and plunging them into water that's seen better centuries. Upstream, villagers have been dumping last night's gruel. Sheep carcasses float by like bloated rafts, and children splash about, blissfully unaware of the extra protein they're ingesting. You take a cautious sip, reckoning that a couple of stomach cramps are a fair price for hydration. If you're lucky enough to live near a well, you might have arguably clean water, except the well is open to the air, so leaves, bird droppings, and the occasional rat skeleton find their way in. You lower your bucket, feel it brush against something slimy, and hope it's not last week's frog. Filter, cloth, boil? Those are words you hear from travelling apothecaries, but they're too busy selling snake oil to teach proper brewing. For the womenfolk, the monthly curse, known as the flowers, is managed with strips of cloth, which are rinsed in shared wash basins and hung on lines to dry. Privacy is a luxury. If you're in a crowded household, Everyone sees your stained rags flapping in the breeze. You learn creative curses to hurl at passing gawkers. Nobles might have better linen and private maidens to care for them, but even they fear the flowers, because it supposedly makes them susceptible to evil spirits. Enterprising priests and midwives sell herbal concoctions, yarrow, mugwort, and sometimes crushed toad, to ease cramps, but these often induce more than just relief. Side effects range from wild hallucinations to surprise miscarriages, so handle with caution. And what about if you are feeling unwell? Medieval medicine prescribes bloodletting. You sit in the barber surgeon's chair, a wooden seat with armrests festooned with rusty hooks, and watch as he brandishes a curved knife. Just a little pinch, he assures you. In your panic, you don't notice him sharpening his blade on a whetstone. One sliced vein later, you're gushing a torrent of red as if you're auditioning for the local pageant. The barber surgeon fetishes every drop, weighing them on a scale to determine your ill humours. He may call it balancing the humours, but modern translation is, here's hoping you don't bleed out. Post-bleeding, you're given a cup of watery wine and told to rest. You feel tired, faint, and slightly dizzy, either from the blood loss or relief that it's over. Magical cure? Hardly. But hey, you're down a few pints, so maybe that chronic headache will resolve itself. Now, when it comes to toilets, in some castles and monasteries, you find garderobes, stone seats, built into the walls with a chute dropping waste into the moat below. It's advertised as luxury accommodations because it keeps you off the streets. However, moat water becomes a noxious stew that the fish avoid. On Saturdays, brave anglers stick netted poles into the muck, pray for carp, and return hungry. Villagers share outhouses, wooden huts perched over cesspits that are never emptied, except when desperate labourers dig them out and spread the contents on fields as fertilizer. Another reason vegetables taste, shall we say, robust. The stink wafts for yards. You hold your breath and hurry past, vowing to invest in a private terrace someday, assuming you survive the lottery of medieval life. With no deodorant, unless you count crushed alum stone as a miracle, you sweat profusely in summer, when wool tunics hug your body like a second skin. Half the village literally glows. You might see travellers tossing handfuls of dried mint or tarragon into their garments, hoping to smell like salad. It's either genius or lunacy. Nonetheless, people nod politely and keep their distance. At church on Sundays, you're packed in like sardines on wooden pews. Everyone chants. The priest sweats buckets in his robes, and no one dares open a window. Heretics might sneak in. The combined bouquet of unwashed bodies, incense, and fear of the Almighty creates a spiritual sauna. You pray fervently for a breeze, any breeze, even if it carries the outside stink. And then, on top of all this, when the Black Death strikes, pale victims bulging with buboes, hygiene doesn't save you. Still, some take extreme measures. They wear garlic garlands, carry roses in cloth pouches, or douse themselves in diluted vinegar. Nothing helps. Some believe sweat expels demons. Others insist you must not bathe at all to avoid opening the pores. Advice is contradictory, and experts, clerics, physicians, local wise women shout over each other. Meanwhile, the plague spreads like wildfire, indifferent to soap, charms, or prayers. Then there is body hair. It's considered uncouth. You'll see nobles plucking brows and eyelashes to achieve a perpetual surprised look. The tools, sharpened shells, tweezers made of deer antler, or cauterizing hot pokers. Ouch! If you survive without infection, you're deemed elegant. Commoners stick to scraping with a blunt knife, leaving half-finished tufts that resemble bad tapestry work. And what about the dentist? While many can't afford a proper tooth extraction session, they resort to chewing on garlic or bitter herbs to mask decay. Some believe that swallowing powdered charcoal will blacken teeth pleasantly, like modern-day charcoal toothpaste marketing, but dirtier. You might concoct a paste of crushed snail shells and vinegar, smear it on your gums, and pray for brightening results. If a tooth abscesses, you gargle boiled onion skins or swish with bile from freshly slaughtered animals, sharp, brutal, and likely to cause more gagging than healing. You've survived the river's floating surprises and the barber surgeon's lively slicing. Now let's venture deeper into the maze of medieval hygiene, where superstition meets stubbornness and pets fare no better than their owners. Medieval folk love a good talisman, feeling itchy, feverish, or just plain grimy. Tie a bag of herbs, such as St. John's wort, wormwood, and marjoram, around your neck and declare yourself protected from foul vapors. Some insist a live toad in a jar, tapped gently, will absorb disease. The toad croaks defiantly until it croaks permanently. Either way, you feel reassured, which counts for something. Rebels against the miasma theory hang onions in windowsills, believing onions draw out bad air. Unfortunately, they also draw flies, who promptly deposit eggs in the onions and anywhere nearby. Soon you have onion flies, which dive bomb your skin and leave red welts, prompting you to curse the very onions meant to save you. At least your house smells predictably oniony now. Your faithful hound, more flea magnet than friend, requires a spa day. You dunk it in a wooden tub of soapy water, a luxury concoction of animal fat and ash, and scrub with a stiff brush. The dog shakes violently, spraying muddy water and ash across your face, and bolts for the yard, carrying half the foam in its fur. You chase after it, armed with a linen cloth and a scrap of jerky, offering forgiveness and a snack. Cats, aloof as ever, deem any attempt at grooming an act of war. Your attempts at brushing only provoke a flurry of hisses, scratches, and airborne tufts of hair. You abandon the effort and vow to let nature take its course, until you wake up in the morning matted in a hairball the size of a small pumpkin. Believing love blooms with balanced humours, maidens seeking suitors soak small leeches in wine and place them on their cheeks. Supposedly, the leech's rhythmic nibbling gives a healthy blush and draws admirers. Instead, you end up weeping at the sight of crimson trails and swiping at tiny morsels of flesh. Occasionally, a suitor arrives to admire your rosy complexion, only to faint at the sight of fresh wounds. Romance in medieval times, bloody, awkward, and never dull. Physicians also use leeches to treat headaches, gout, and melancholy humours. You lie back, offering your arm haplessly, while dozens of leeches latch on, gourmands in miniature, groaning with satisfaction. After they're full, they fall off, leaving oozy wounds you smear with honey to staunch the bleeding, because honey's antiseptic, you've heard. Reality check. It's sticky, sweet, and attracts ants. Ants crawling over your wounds may or may not improve your mood. The true masters of medieval hygiene were actually the monks. Monasteries take hygiene more seriously. Monks practice the threefold wash: hands before meals, feet after long prayers, and faces at dawn. They chant psalms as they scrub their hands in cold stone basins, using lye soap made from ashes and tallow. It's basic, yes, but better than nothing. Guests at the abbey are offered warm water and towels, true luxury in the Middle Ages, though the towels are linen and scratch like brambles. Yet the strict routine yields its own quirks. Every Friday is Soapless Day to honor Christ's suffering, so everyone forgoes wash and must rely on mussel and herbs. A fortnight later, Main Wash Day arrives, and the courtyards fill with monks rinsing habits in troughs, turning the air to steamy lavender sage fog. It's a spectacle that draws curious villagers who trade gossip for splashes of scented water. Now what about the medieval tools of hygiene? Beyond soap and water, medieval kits include myriad gadgets. The distaff, a wooden staff that spins flax into thread, doubles as a hair-taming stick when your braid unravels. The oyster shell, polished smooth, serves as a makeshift mirror, small, warped, but better than nothing when plucking stray chin hairs or checking for lice eggs. For dental disasters, you keep a bundle of fine twigs, chewing sticks, at hand. Fray one end until it forms a bristly brush, then rub vigorously along your teeth. It's scratchy, effective, and leaves wood fibers to gnaw on. Afterward, you rinse with wine or vinegar. Wine freshens your breath if you can afford it. Vinegar does the job if you like smelling like a salad dressing. Annual fairs promise indulgence in cleanliness, for a price. Travelling merchants set up bath booths, patched together from wool tents. Inside, a barrel of steaming water steeps with herbs, mint, rose petals, or juniper. You pay a penny, strip down and soak. A hired bath usher scrubs you vigorously, then hands you a rag to pat dry. You emerge surprisingly refreshed, if a tad damp and self-conscious in a linen shift. The fair's next attraction is the perfume stall. Bottles of scented oils, ambergris, musk and civet sit on wooden shelves. You dab a dot on your wrists, but quickly discover musk is overpowering. Local dogs howl in protest, and passing children hold their noses dramatically. You decide rose oil is safer, even if it means smelling like a wedding bouquet for days. When pus collects under your skin, local wise women prescribe poultices of bread soaked in vinegar and onion juice. You spread the paste on your wound, wrap with clean linen, as clean as medieval linen can be, and wait. The poultice softens the skin. You squeeze out the gunk in a messy ritual that leaves your fingers slick. You rinse with wine and hope for the best. It usually works, sometimes by miracle, sometimes because your body fights back, and you limp away, wiser and stickier than before. For general grime, splashing your face with rosewater, if you can get it, is all the rage. Noble ladies carry small glass vials in embroidered pouches. Commoners smuggle scraps of rose petals in pockets. Rose petals are turned to scented water by distilling in copper stills, a laborious process that few can afford. If you're really desperate, you soak petals overnight in spring water, strain, and call it rose hydrosol. It's faint, but it beats plain water. You've endured flea spasms, river-gulped sips, and leech-love affairs. Now it's time to face the drudgeries of dirt, laundry battles, kitchen catastrophes, and the perpetual tragedy of ragged nails. Once a month, if you can manage it, you call for laundry day. You haul your pile of tunics, hose, shifts, and handkerchiefs to the wash house by the river. There, a group of village matrons stand waist-deep in chilly water, sloshing ashes and lye paste between rocks. You drop in your clothes and join in, each garment receiving a beating with a paddle that echoes like war drums. Soap bubbles are scarce. Most of the grime is wrenched out by sheer brute force. While paddling, you gossip. The chatter distracts you from your aching back and frozen toes. After the scrubbing, the rinsing begins. More dunking, more teeth chattering, until your teeth rattle like loose bones. Finally, You spread the garments on sun-baked stones or drape them over hedges. But drying is half the battle. A sudden rain shower can turn your efforts back into mud. By evening, your tunic, intended for church tomorrow, sags with moisture and smells faintly of mildew. You vow to invent a roofed laundry someday, but for now, you troop home, dripping and defeated. In the hearth's glow, you prepare your daily stew, a dubious blend of barley, root vegetables, and whatever scraps survived yesterday. Cleanliness in the kitchen is a vague concept. Your wooden spoon doubles as a hoof scraper when the coop needs cleaning. After stirring, you plop it on the dirt floor beside the hearth. A stray mouse may nibble the handle before you notice. Your cauldron, cast iron and covered in layers of old soot and mystery gunk, hangs above the fire. You ladle out stew into bowls and pass them around to your family. Inevitably, someone discovers a bit of twig, shell fragment, or, if you're unlucky, a worm that's fallen in from last night's open window. The children avert their eyes, skewer the worm on their spoons, and flick it onto the floor, where the dog promptly devours it. Crisis averted, stomachs fill, and life goes on. Utensils are communal, bowl, spoon, and knife used by all. Fingers wipe rims, lips leave smudges. No soap means dried porridge crust on edges that soften over days of reheating. When you fetch a clean bowl, it's often the formerly clean bowl that you last used to fetch water. Your fingernails are tragic relics of hard labor. Dirt nests beneath them like miniature caves. Some folks use metal nail scrapers, little pointed tools meant for the job, but those are rare as hen's teeth. Instead, you pinch, scratch, and rub with rough cloth to dislodge debris. The results are painful: ripped cuticles, bleeding knuckles, and nails that look like miniature stone picks. If you're ambitious, you soak your fingers in a bowl of warm water mixed with ash and vinegar, hoping the gunk will soften. You sit for minutes, tailbone cramping, until you can insert your thumbnail under the grime and flick it out. Each flick is a small victory, until you nick the skin and spend the next day grimacing. Then, you rub a dab of animal fat on your hands to soothe them. The fat leaves you glossy and crumb-magnetic, but at least your hands smell like bacon. Despite your soapless, splash-pour regimen, critters thrive. Fleas bounce off your tunic lining, launching surprise attacks on your ankles. You attempt to chase them out by standing on a chair and stamping both feet, but the floorboards thunder and your spouse thinks the cow is loose again. Mice nibble off the edges of your bread, ticks burrow into your calves, and cockroaches skitter across the hearth at night. You sleep with one eye open, slipper in hand, ready for midnight extermination. Occasionally, you hear tales of fresh breezes in the Alps or scented mountain springs that promise pristine water and rejuvenation. You contemplate a pilgrimage, equal parts cleanliness, crusade, and spiritual quest. Packing your meager belongings, you imagine breezes ruffling your hair, minus the lice, streams clear enough to see tadpoles, and soap bars gleaming like holy relics. But travel is perilous. Bandits lurk on roads, rivers flood, and inns charge extortionate fees for fresh linens that are anything but. You stay home, settle for a single bowl of warmed water from the well, and remind yourself that saints suffered worse. You clasp your hands, whisper a prayer for forgiveness, and dry off as best you can with a patched linen towel. Once in Blue Moon, your town hosts a travelling merchant selling soap of the Orient, a bar of scented lye soap imported from distant lands. It's £0.50 per piece, an astronomical sum. When you splurge, you guard that soap like treasure, rationing it drop by drop. Instead of washing all at once, You rub the bar over your forearms, then rub the lather around your neck the next day. It feels heavenly. Bubbles, fragrance, and the unmistakable thrill of actual clean skin. For a moment, you're convinced this is heaven on earth. Despite your occasional soap splurge, bathhouses have gone out of fashion. The church's warnings still echo. Naked bodies congregate in heated rooms, sin thrives under steam, and God despises such vulgar displays. You reflect that perhaps your ancestors were onto something by avoiding baths. Maybe cleanliness lowers your defenses, drawing in the unclean spectres that lurk in the air. You decide to keep your rare soap for the occasional face wash, and to dab it discreetly behind your ears. You've scrubbed, sweated, and splashed. Now let's explore the fine art of medieval surgeries gone awry, eye-rinsing rituals that sting like a wasp, and the surprising cleanliness, or lack thereof, among the craftsmen who shape your world. When your leg has been crushed by a falling beam, call the surgeon means call the local blacksmith's apprentice. Formal medical training is rare outside big cities. Most surgeons learned by watching a master once, then practicing on sheep. You lie on a wooden plank, arms pinned by stout peasants, as the barber surgeon unsheathes a gleaming instrument, that is, a hatchet borrowed from the woodpile. One swift chop removes the lower limb, bone and all. You don't know you're supposed to scream. Only knights have that privilege. A makeshift tourniquet of hemp rope slows the bleeding until it clots, or until you pass out. When you wake, you find your stump wrapped in linen smeared with honey and broken eggshells, touted as an antiseptic dressing. It's sticky, it's smelly, but somehow it works, most of the time. If amputation seems extreme, try cautery. Rather than remove a diseased limb, the barber surgeon heats an iron rod until it glows like a troll's furnace and presses it against the offending spot. Boil, wart, or persistent toothache. You leap off the table, hair singed, skin smoking, and vow silently never to complain about a stubbed toe again. Cautery is popular for stopping bleeding too. After a battlefield accident, your buddy's leg is spurting like a fountain. The surgeon cauterizes the wound, leaving a black, crusty scab that smells of burnt meat. It's gruesome, but it seals the vein faster than any bandage. You learn to keep a respectful distance from anyone sporting a charred patch of flesh. When your eyes are pestered by dust, trachoma, or evil humors, a simple rinse is deemed miraculous. The recipes range from mildly pleasant to downright revolting. Rosewater soak. Nobles insist on distilled rosewater, sprinkled from a silver ewer. It stings mildly, but leaves your eyes feeling refreshed. You try not to imagine the hundreds of petals boiled down to make a thimbleful. Urine eye drops. Commoners swear by diluted urine, preferably morning pee, believing the ammonia cleanses the eye. You hold a cup, try not to gag, and drip a few drops in. The burn is immediate and fierce, like a horde of fire ants. If you survive, your vision improves, or at least you don't scratch your eyeballs out. Honey and butter balm. For chronic infections, wise women apply a paste of honey mixed with butter. The honey's antiseptic properties are real enough, but the butter melts in the sun and runs into your hair. You emerge looking like a woodland creature and feeling marginally better. Knowing which concoction to choose is guesswork. Apothecaries label vials in Latin, fons oculi restaurationis. But you haven't studied in Padua, so you cross your fingers and hope for the best. Footwear shapes your life. You trudge through mud, waste, and muck all day. Shoemakers fashion leather boots with little regard for hygiene. Animal hides soaked in stale tanning vats coated with lime and rotten fish guts. If you're lucky, your shoes are treated with pine resin to seal out water. If not, they stink so badly that children point and gag when you pass. Every fortnight, you take your boots to the boot washer, a local lad who scrubs them in river water mixed with pot ash. He beats them with a length of rope to loosen dried mud, then hangs them by their laces above the hearth. Heat dries the leather but crackles off any remaining filth. You retrieve your boots, pat them with beeswax to restore suppleness, and trudge on, grateful for small mercies. Clothmakers and dyers swear by mordants, chemicals that fix dyes. The tannery quarter reeks of ammonia and decaying flesh, as hides steep in vats. If you work there, you change tunics daily, yet still seep odours of hide and hair. A sprinkle of brimstone and vinegar on your shirt might mask the stink for an hour, but you'll return home smelling like a cattle market. To remove stubborn food stains, cooks recommend boiling the fabric in water with wood ash. It whitens linen effectively until the fibres weaken and holes appear. If you can't tell which hole was from wear and which from wash day, you simply darn and pretend it's decorative embroidery. Candle makers, often in monasteries, pride themselves on pure beeswax candles. The cheap candles sold in markets are mixed with tallow, soot, and leftover oils. Burn one in your hut, and your walls turn black overnight. Fine folk hang tapestries. You hang up an old sheet and accept the perpetually grimy interior. Your face bears the evidence. You wake with a layer of sooty film that scrapes off in clumps as you rub your cheeks. Baking soda paste removes some of it, if you can get baking soda. Otherwise, you blot with damp sand, which exfoliates roughly and leaves your skin scarred in tiny craters. Rustic beauty sells it when nothing else will. Carpenters work with wood shavings, dust and resin that sticks everywhere. Their clothes are covered in splinters. Their skin feels sandpapered. They rely on sawdust baths to exfoliate. They lay a layer of fine dust in the corner of the workshop, strip down modestly behind a screen, and roll around until the shavings pry away grime and dead skin. It's itchy, uncomfortable, and practically a flock of birds perched on you. But afterward, you're smoother than your workbench. Weavers spend days at the loom, breathing in bits of wool or flax that irritate lungs and skin. To remove airborne fibres, they sit near windows and let the wind blow through the workshop, closing only when storms threaten. Their faces bear red patches from hail-like flurry of fibres, which they soothe with cooled vinegar compresses. Patrons marvel at their rosy cheeks, unaware it's not blush, but dermatitis. Not all crafts are grim, though. Glass blowers working near furnaces have access to hot water for cleaning greasy tools. Their workshops keep a kettle boiling. They rinse hands regularly to avoid clouding glass with fingerprints. Metalworkers, too, dip tools in vats of water for quenching, becoming accustomed to washing hands in scalding baths that kill most microbes. Though they don't know about microbes, they just like not having black grime etched under their nails. By now, you see that medieval hygiene is a patchwork of superstition, improvisation, and the occasional stroke of ingenuity. Whether you're under the sawdust of the weaver, the smoke of the tanner, or the steam of the brewer, you learn that clean is a moving target. Next, we'll venture into the realm of culinary cleanliness, explore hair removal rituals gone wrong, and peek at the surprisingly organized hygiene codes of certain guilds. Your hearth is the heart of the home, but it's also a magnet for grime. The wooden table where you chop vegetables has knife grooves harboring yesterday's marrow. Crumbs nestle in the cracks, feeding ants that march in single file to their anthill kingdom. You wipe the board with a damp cloth once a week, if you remember, and pray that vinegar in the pan's rinse water counts as sanitizing. Utensils live in a basket by the fire, mingling with bits of ash and stray hairs. When you need a spoon, you fish one out and lick off whatever clings to it. You've come to appreciate the flavor variations. Ash adds a smoky accent. Hair, a chewy texture. Guests marvel at your rustic cooking. The brew pot, a blackened relic from countless fires, gives your ale its signature campfire taste. No kettle-in-kitchen etiquette here. Mice dart around the hearth, sometimes leaping into mashed tuns where your future beer ferments. You fish them out with a wooden spoon and declare them unintended protein additions. It's a balanced diet you claim, though the travelers' faces suggest otherwise. As we discussed briefly earlier, medieval beauty decrees that body hair is uncivilized. You decide to try hair removal and buy a jar of sugar wax, honey boiled with lemon juice until it's gloopy and golden. You slather it on your arms, press a strip of linen over it, and yank. You discover two truths. 1. Hair grows back like weeds. And 2. Ripping off skin is genuinely painful. The linen strip remains half stuck. You tug and end up with a patch of rug-burned flesh that leaves you limping. Seeking less torture, you try a hot iron, press gently across your skin, with hopes it will singe hair, not flesh. The result? A bizarre polka dot pattern of singed stubble and burn blisters. You look like a Dalmatian with a bad haircut and spend the next fortnight wearing a cloak, swearing off beauty regimens forever. Interestingly, some crafts organized themselves into guilds during medieval times, early unions that set standards not only for quality, but surprisingly, for cleanliness. The Baker's Guild. Bakers must wash their hands before kneading dough, remarkable for a time when hand washing is rare. The guild hall has basins carved in stone, and apprentices rub their palms with loamy soap made of animal fat and ash. If a baker is caught skipping this step, they pay a fine in loaves, which the guild distributes to the poor. Clean hands make better bread, they say. Fewer maggots in the loaves keep customers coming. The Butcher's Guild. The Butcher's Guild demands that cleavers and hooks be rinsed in running water between carcasses. A damp cloth alone won't do. The guild provides a trough outside the shop for this purpose, though running water really means a bucket you ladle repeatedly. A modest concession to hygiene. Slaughtered animals are meant to be eviscerated in designated yards, not simply dragged through the stall, minimizing blood splatter on the street. The Apothecaries Guild. Apothecaries handle herbs, powders, and potions, some dangerously toxic. Their guild charter orders that mixing tables be wiped with wine after each preparation, both to clean and to preserve. They wear simple linen tunics they change daily, reasoning that fresh fabric prevents cross-contamination of remedies. While the general populace scoffs at posh apothecaries, their patients live longer, sometimes. And now you set out early for market day, clutching a basket of eggs to trade for cheese. Market stalls are lined with cured meats hung from beams, tempting, until you spot maggots wriggling between sausages. The butcher assures you it's part of the aging process. You shudder, hand over your eggs, and decide to stick to cheese, hoping it's maggot-free. Fruit and vegetable vendors display their wares on tables cobbled from planks. Straw is scattered underneath to absorb spills, but it quickly turns slick with water, slime, and who knows what. You negotiate fiercely, inspect each apple for blemishes and tiny holes, and wash your purchases in a basin of water scented with rosemary, if you can spare the herbs. Even this washing is more about prestige than cleanliness, but mint leaves bobbing in your jug at least lift your spirits. What about if you are wealth during these times? Well, if you're fortunate enough to visit a lord's castle, you glimpse the rarefied world of private baths. A gilt tub sits in a lavish chamber heated from below by coals. Warm water steams around you while servants rub you down with fine soap scented with rose and lavender. You lean back, marveling at the sensation of true cleanliness. No itch, no grit, no fly buzzing in your ear. After your bath, you wrap in a towel of thick linen, imported from Flanders, and nap on a cushioned bench. A page fans you with palm fronds scented with citrus peels. It feels like a dream, until you realize your servants are standing outside the room, waiting for the next chance to share that water. Still, you savor every bubble and pledge to save up for a tub of your own, assuming you survive the next raid. Back to reality. In larger towns, you hear tales of steam chambers where ladies and gents bathe separately behind heavy curtains. The baths are social hubs. Gossip flows as freely as the water. Deals are struck, marriages arranged, and secrets spilled. Bathhouse owners sell refreshments, wine, roasted chestnuts, and spiced cakes to keep patrons nibbling between soaks. Despite whispers of scandal, secret liaisons in steamy corners, the public baths endure because they're the only real way to feel clean. If you ever find yourself in such a place, you bring a spare tunic and pray you don't leave with more than just clean skin. A potboiler story for the next tavern gathering. Medieval life may seem like an endless contest between dirt and desperation, but beneath the grime are sparks of creativity, pockets of order, and moments of pure surprise. Like the baker's soap, the apothecary's wine rinse, and the lord's gilded tub. The struggle for cleanliness shaped daily routines, inspired guild rules, and sparked innovations that, however rudimentary, laid the groundwork for modern hygiene. Now let's see where we'll dive into next. Laundry innovations, plague-era cleanliness myths, and the ultimate medieval DIY spa treatments, warts and all. By the late Middle Ages, enterprising launderers began experimenting beyond river paddles and rain-drenched hedges. Ash and urine lie. When wood ash met stale urine, the chemical reaction produced a crude soap, potash. Launderers collected urine from chamber, mixed it with ash, boiled the concoction in cauldrons, and skimmed the floating soap. What remained was solid enough to form into bars, which they sold at market. It stank like nothing you'd scrub away, but it worked better than plain ash. Fulling mills. In cloth-producing regions, fulling mills mechanized the pounding of wool. Driven by water wheels, heavy wooden hammers, called fulling stocks, rammed cloth in vats of lye or stale urine, agitating and cleansing fabric at industrial scale. The process raised the nap, thickened the cloth, and removed natural oils and impurities. Bakers, tanners, and clothiers under one roof. It was a smelly assembly line that impressed merchants and repelled pigeons. Alum mordants. Alum, a mineral salt imported from the Eastern Mediterranean, fixed dyes and softened fabric. Laundresses rinsed garments in alum solutions to help them hold color and resist blistering in water. Though expensive, alum baths lasted longer, meaning fewer scrubs, and thus less wear on precious linen. If you owned an alum-treated shift, you were practically a walking billboard of status. These innovations transformed laundry from a back-breaking chore into a proto-industry. Still, most villagers washed by hand, so the sight of larger-than-life hammers smashing tunics was a marvel and an olfactory nightmare. When the Black Death, 1347 to 1351, swept through Europe, panic spawned wild rumors about cleanliness, Burn it all. Some communities burned entire garments of plague victims to stop contagion, while fire killed fleas and airborne pathogens. In hindsight, a good idea. It also destroyed scarce textiles and left families in tattered rags. Saltwater soaks. Others believed that soaking bodies in salt water would draw out miasma. Churchyards flooded, salt leached into groundwater, and local wildlife fled. It did disinfect wounds, but it also left victims shriveled like pickles. Flagellant showers. Religious fanatics whipped themselves in public streets, believing their bloodshed absolved collective sin. Spectators noted that open wounds gushed and bodies reeked of unwashed gore, hardly hygienic. These processions sometimes accelerated contagion rather than slowed it. Despite the horrors, the plague prompted better sanitary measures in some cities. Quarantine ships, smoke fumigations of streets, and rudimentary garbage removal. Neighboring villages, however, remained blissfully or ignorantly mired in fetid filth. Even without modern spas, medieval DIY aficionados concocted personal treatments. Pumice stone buffs. Pumice, from volcanic quarries, served as natural exfoliant. Widows of Vesuvius traded their haul for high prices. You dampen skin, rub in circular motions, and slough off dead cells, only to discover a rash from overzealous scrubbing. Moderation, it turned out, was a luxury. Barley yeast fumigation. Brewers noted that yeast smelled pleasant and discouraged pests. Curious souls brewed up barley yeast in pots, boiled it, and inhaled the steam, hoping it cleared sinuses and lungs. The ritual left them sticky and slightly drunk. But hey, why not? Oily tallow masks. Rendered animal fat mixed with egg whites formed a face mask. You spread it thick, let it dry, then peel off like the world's most gruesome sticker. It removed hair and superficial grime, but also a few layers of your epidermis. Afterwards, you dabbed on rosewater balm to soothe the stinging. Needless to say, these treatments had mixed results. Yet confidence was half the cure. If you believed your barley steam alleviated a cough, it probably did in spirit. So what about noble circles? Personal attendants championed elaborate cleanliness rituals. Gown changes. A lady of quality changed her gown 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, each tunic soaking up sweat, oils, and spilled oils. That meant 3 laundry rounds or new gowns each day, a luxury weavers capitalized on by spinning extra silk at premium rates. Perfume gloves, courtly gloves stored in cedarwood chests. Once a month, gloves were boiled in rosewater and lavender oils, then pressed flat to set the scent. Guests sniffed the hostess's hands before shaking them, a social litmus test. Bed-warming sergeants. Before bedtime, pages warmed the bed with hot bricks wrapped in linen. Neither servant nor master dared skip the daily airing of bed linens. Damp sheets were replaced with clean ones weekly, an unheard-of practice in lower classes. These customs required armies of servants and enormous resources. But they also set examples. Visitors to court sometimes adopted aspects of noble hygiene, trickling innovations downward. As things progressed, by the late 1400s, some cities instituted rudimentary sanitation codes. Night watch litter patrols. Municipal ordinances fined residents for dumping waste in streets after sunset. Watchmen patrolled with lanterns, hauling barrels of refuse to designated pits. It diminished disease vectors slightly. Well regulations. Wells were fenced off, and animals forbidden within a certain radius. Town councils posted signs. No privy within 40 paces, though enforcement was spotty. These were precursors to modern zoning laws. Pest control bounties. Rats and fleas spread flea-borne diseases and carried plague. Some cities offered pennies for every rat tail surrendered. Volunteer rat hunters wore leather boots and grim smiles, wielding clubs and lanterns on moonless nights. It wasn't cleanliness nirvana, but it marked a shift from passive acceptance to active management of public health. The medieval struggle for cleanliness was messy, inventive, and often hilarious. From fulling mills pounding tunics to pigeon-powered polishers, from plague-driven purges to barley yeast steams, humanity's quest to stay clean forged practices, superstitions and regulations that prefigured modern hygiene. Though they lacked our germ theory, they sowed seeds of innovation, winnowing superstition into nascent public health. You've witnessed fulling mills and plague panics. Now let's turn our gaze to personal grooming artifacts, hygiene insights borrowed from abroad, and the medieval practices that cling to our modern routines. Bone and horn combs. Combs carved from bone or horn were prized possessions. You carry yours in a leather pouch, carefully inserted after each use to avoid breakage. When lice invaded, you'd slide the fine-toothed comb through tufts of hair, twitching at every wriggling critter you extracted. Flick them into the fire for a gruesome bonfire snack and feel victorious. Pocket mirrors. Small, polished bronze or silver mirrors fit snugly in pouches. You lift the lid, peek at your reflection, checking for stray chin hairs or battle scars, and realize the mirror's surface is slightly warped. The life lesson? Beauty is forgiving when seen through a wavy lens. Toothpicks and mouth mirrors. Toothpicks made of metal or wood help dislodge food debris. Some nobles carried mouth mirrors, tiny reflective discs on handles, to inspect their teeth after meals. You try one and see a blackened tooth cavity staring back. You swiftly abandon the mirror, curse your dentistless fate, and vow to chew more twigs. And what about outside influences from abroad? Travelers from the Levant introduced the concept of ritual washing, wudu, before prayers. You learn to pour water over your hands, mouth, nostrils, arms, head, and feet in precise order. It's refreshing and surprisingly thorough, leaving you feeling cleaner than weeks of river dips. Though you don't adopt the full ritual, you borrow the sequence for hand washing before meals, with great effect. Roman bath inspirations. Ancient ruins whisper of thermae, public baths with hot and cold rooms, massage booths, and exercise areas. Merchants revive rudimentary versions. A hot room heated by coals, followed by a cold chamber cooled with lake water. You pay a small fee, sweat out toxins, and plunge into chilly water, gasping and shivering, but exhilarated. You note, sauna culture isn't just a modern fad. Eastern spice sachets. Spice traders from India and Asia bring sachets of clove, cinnamon, and cardamom. You tuck these into tunic folds or hang them by the hearth. They perfume the air and discourage pests. While expensive, even a small pouch brings hours of relief from the village's stink symphony. Portable hand basins. Wealthy merchants commission small wooden basins with spigots, tiny prototypes of sinks. Servants filled them with fresh water throughout the day. Your host offers you a basin before meals. You dip your fingers and rinse, marveling at how simple this is. You return home inspired, drafting plans for your own sink, though you suspect the local carpenter will charge dearly. Linen handkerchiefs. Paper is precious. Instead, traveling merchants carry linen squares, embroidered if you're fortunate. They dab sweat, wipe their brow, or cover their mouth when coughing. After use, hanging the handkerchief to air out, repeating until wash day. It's rudimentary, but more polite than cuff sniffing. Straw insulated beds. To keep vermin away, nobles fill mattresses with straw covered by linen. The pest controls include aromatic herbs, lavender, thyme, woven into the filling. You attempt a proto-version by placing crushed rosemary under your palate. You sleep more soundly, dreams undisturbed by crawling things. You may also be surprised that there are medieval hygiene practices that still survive today. Soap bars. The most enduring legacy is soap. From ashes and tallow to scented lye bars, the concept of a solid cleansing agent persists. You chuckle at how far soap has come, now in peppermint and shea butter, but you appreciate that basic idea born of medieval necessity. Tooth cleaning sticks. Chewing sticks evolved into toothbrushes. The concept of fraying one end of a twig lives on in modern bristles. You toss out your plastic brush for a bamboo stick now and enjoy the satisfying snap as you chew. Hand-washing protocols. Thanks to voodoo and guild rules, the practice of washing hands before meals and after tasks endures. You find yourself instinctively rubbing lather between fingers, recalling a monk's threefold wash, even as you soap up. Spa culture. Modern spas owe a debt to Roman and medieval baths. Steam rooms, hot-cold cycles, and massage therapies echo ancient rituals. Next time you book a sauna session, raise a silent toast to those intrepid bathhouse pioneers. Comparing our world to theirs, you marvel at indoor plumbing, antibacterial soap, and electric razors. Yet you respect medieval ingenuity, alum mordants, fulling mills, and portable basins, born from necessity. Their creativity laid the groundwork for our world of showers, hand sanitizers, and dental floss. As you finish your ale by candlelight, you think, hygiene is a journey, not a destination. Our ancestors scrubbed with ashes. We spray foam from cans. They milled wool in rivers. We hummed through laundromats. They sniffed pomanders. We filled diffusers with essential oils. Each era borrows from the last, refining the art of staying clean. You strap on your leather jerkin, hitch up your breeches, and step onto the dew-soaked field where your lord's banner flies. The drum rolls, sending shivers through ranks of men whose last wash was sometime before yesterday's battle. Welcome to the smelly side of medieval warfare, where courage and camp crud go hand in hand. Battlefield bathing, mud, blood, and bile. On campaign, bathing ranks far below sharpening your sword or polishing your armor. Water is heavy to haul. Warm water is heavier. Most soldiers settle for a quick rinse at the nearest stream, if it's not occupied by beasts or refuse. You cup handfuls of cold water, splash your face, and gasp as frozen droplets sting. Hair remains matted, tunic remains stained, and you swear you smell better than Earl Godwin's man, who hasn't washed since the last siege. When commanders bother to set up latrines, they're simple trenches dug outside the camp. You squat behind a wooden screen, if you've got one, and pray no stray shaft of rain carries your business back at you. Worse, the trench often fills faster than the moon, and soldiers improvise night buckets, which clank ominously in the huts. The result? Stale air that clogs nostrils and keeps you dreaming of open streams. Battle wounds are common, and medical teams follow armies like crows to carrion. You watch the chirurgeon at work. He smears tar on a blade, slices away damaged flesh, and pours wine over the cut to cleanse it. Wine stings, but its alcohol helps. Then he packs the wound with a poultice of bread and plantain leaves and wraps it in cloth, often the corner of your own tunic. Infection runs rampant. You pray daily that your bandages hold, and that you won't need another visit to the chirurgeon's table. If your arm aches from unsheathed steel, you might be treated with cautery on the battlefield, an iron poker heated in the campfire. One fiery press and the pain stops, because you're too busy hopping on one foot to notice anything else. Later, you slit the charcoal black scab to let out the bad humours, cross your fingers, and hope the next gash isn't worse. Officers sometimes order a camp cleanup when the smell becomes unbearable, rarely before morale collapses. Soldiers sweep tents, toss leftover rations into shallow pits, and haul away refuse in wicker baskets. A stout fellow dubbed Master of Mess, by ironic vote, supervises. Under threat of extra guard duty, even the laziest soldier rinses his bowl and spoon. It's a brutal task, but the reduction in flies and the slight breeze passing through makes it almost worth the effort. Washing of clothes is more sporadic. Nobles might send out laundry riders who return a week later with yours and a dozen strangers' tunics mixed together. Washed, yes, but in a communal vat. You find yourself wearing half your neighbour's hose, but it's cleaner than your own, so you shrug and pull them on. Not all soldiers ignore cleanliness. Military orders like the Knights Hospitaller maintain infirmaries stocked with linen bandages, well water, and herbal salves. They wash wounds with wine diluted in water and change dressings daily. The Templars, too, pride themselves on regular foot washing, a ritual drawn from Christ's example. Before meals, brothers gather at a basin. They pour water over each other's feet, scrub with cloth, and pat dry. It's humility in practice, and a surprisingly effective way to prevent gangrene. When monks accompany armies as chaplains, they set up simple field cloisters with strict wash routines. Each monk rises before dawn to wash hands and face at an outdoor trough. Their discipline rubs off. Soldiers attached to these camps find themselves rinsing grimy gauntlets and hosing down dusty faces. Though few admit it, the extra rinse often means fewer fevers and smarter marches. After weeks in the saddle, you look down at your boots caked in mud, your tunic stiff with sweat and grime, and your hands scarred from endless toil. Yet you carry your dignity like a banner. Medieval hygiene was less about comfort and more about survival, balancing fear of miasma, the demands of faith, and the realities of daily life. You realize that clean was not an absolute state, but a series of clever workarounds, poultices in place of disinfectants, camp wash-ups under threat of punishment, and holy rituals doubling as hand-washing ceremonies. Dignity lay in the attempt, in gathering at dawn to scrub grimy palms, in forging soap from ashes and urine, in bathing for the few rare moments before returning to the fray. Tomorrow, you'll wake with eyes twitching from river water, pull open the latrine flap, and face another day in a world where hygiene was a luxury and ingenuity the only defense. But you'll step forward with pride, because you know that even in the muddiest middens of history, humanity scratched out moments of cleanliness and left a legacy for us to refine. You wake to now find yourself in the humble timbered hut of a village midwife, anticipating the arrival of a new life. Medieval childbirth is a crossroads of hope, fear, and hygiene, or the lack thereof. If you imagine a modern hospital with sterile gowns, antiseptic wipes, and epidurals, think again. Here, you'll trade smooth linoleum for straw-strewn floors, surgical lights for smoky hearth flames, and fragranced hand sanitizer for wine-dipped cloths. Weeks before the expected day, the midwife's hut becomes a hive of activity. You gather strips of linen, soft, clean as medieval linen can be, to fashion into birth sheets and swaddling cloths, These will cradle your newborn and later serve as reusable nappies. You rinse them in river water, wring them out, and boil them over the fire with a handful of rosemary and rue, herbs prized for their supposed antiseptic properties. The aroma is faintly pleasant, masking that earthy dampness of unboiled fabric. A basin of warm water sits ready, heated by coals beneath a copper cauldron. Wine is added, both to disinfect implements and to bolster spirits. You sniff the concoction, wincing as the vinegar tang rises. Still, a rinse in boiled wine water beats a raw river dip, so you dip your hands and forearms, rubbing them briskly before wiping on a linen towel. The midwife's basket holds a curious assortment: suture needles of polished bone, threaded with linen fibers for stitching tears, obstetrical hooks, simple curved iron rods, used sparingly to reposition a breech or deliver a stuck arm, clean linen garters to bind your legs in stirrups or looped straps on a wooden birthing chair, herbal packets, small cloth bags filled with lavender, mugwort or tansy, pressed to your brow to calm nerves. No surgical gloves exist. The midwife relies on thorough hand rinsing and the antiseptic tang of wine. You observe her ritual. Wash, chant a brief prayer to St. Margaret, patroness of childbirth, then wash again. It's not germ theory, but it's the best precaution offered. You labour in a low chair woven from willow, surrounded by female relatives who sing lullabies and fanning motions to comfort you. When a contraction strikes, you clutch a wooden staff carved with protective runes. The straw beneath you is layered thick for cushioning, but it inevitably shifts, exposing patches of cold, damp floor. Every now and then, a stray straw pricks your flesh, an unwelcome reminder of the natural world. Between contractions, the midwife encourages you to sip a brew of spiced ale and honey, believed to ease pain and open the cervix. You swallow gratefully, even as you wince at the burn. The mixture also functions as a mild disinfectant against internal infection, a 2-for-1 remedy. When the time comes, you push with all your might. The air is heavy with sweat, dust motes dancing in the hearth's glow. A wet rustle fills the room as the baby emerges, slippery, and utterly miraculous. The midwife swiftly cuts the umbilical cord with a flint knife, then ties it off with a clean linen garter. She wipes the newborn's mouth and nose with a soft cloth dipped in wine water, clearing amniotic fluids and mucus. She nods, checking for a strong cry and pink limbs. The baby's vernix, the white, waxy coating, is rubbed gently onto the skin, rather than entirely washed away, believed to protect against chills. Only a light rinse in warm water follows, sparing the newborn from a full bath until the umbilical stump falls off, usually after a week. After birth, you enter the lying-in period, traditionally lasting up to a month. During this time, you remain largely bedridden on a raised straw mattress covered in clean linen. Each day, the midwife comes to wash your face and hands with warm, scented water, changing linens as needed. You're spared daily full-body baths, considered too taxing and believed to open the pores to evil humours. But you do enjoy a sponge bath of warmth and fragrance. Your diet consists of broths of barley, roasted chicken, and cooling fruits, chosen to restore your strength and prevent heat-induced fevers. All utensils and bowls used for postpartum meals are rinsed meticulously in wine water, then set aside for the midwife's future visits, ensuring no cross-contamination with your birthing linens. Newborn care relies heavily on swaddling. The baby is wrapped snugly in long linen strips to restrict movement, keep limbs warm, and protect from external dirt. The strips are boiled and aired before use and changed 3 times a day. Were a strip soiled with urine or meconium, it's rinsed immediately in cold water, then boiled and dried over the fire. You bathe the infant sparingly, only once or twice in its first month, to avoid chilling. The bath is a shallow basin with lukewarm water, infused with chamomile and mint. The midwife cradles the baby gently, washing folds of skin and leaving the hair for after the umbilical stump heals. Afterwards, she pats the baby dry and wraps it in a clean blanket, murmuring blessings to ward off wind and colic. The placenta, or afterbirth, is treated with reverence and precaution. Wrapped in linen and carried to the hearth, it's briefly smoked over rosemary sprigs, intended to purify and prevent disease spread. Some women keep a dried piece of the placenta in a small pouch, believing it offers protection during future pregnancies. Others bury it at the house's threshold to guard against evil spirits. Often, the placenta wrapping is discarded or burned, along with the midwife's cloths, to prevent smells and miasma. You watch the smoke curl upward, feeling both relief and a pang of awe at the cycle of life and death. Throughout childbirth, you rely on charms. A red woolen belt tied around your waist for strength, a simple iron horseshoe buried under the birthing chair to ward off demons, and a small silver cross pressed to your chest for comfort. The midwife sprinkles a few drops of holy water on the floor, chanting psalms to keep malevolent spirits at bay. Whether these rituals affect hygiene is doubtful, but they soothe the mind and tighten community bonds. By modern standards, medieval childbirth is perilous and unsanitary. Puerperal fever was common, claiming many mothers. Yet within these constraints, midwives developed practical routines: boiling linens, wine water washes, careful handling of the newborn to reduce infection. Their ingenuity laid early foundations for obstetric care, even if germ theory lay centuries ahead. You cradle your clean and cleanish baby, exhausted but exhilarated. The straw beneath still creaks, the hearth's embers glow faintly, and the midwife departs with her basket of tools and herbs. You look at your child's rose-pink skin and think, we did it. In the mire of medieval hygiene, this moment shines like pure, untainted water. You now turn your gaze to the winding roads of pilgrimage and the bustling streets of emerging medieval cities. From sacred journeys to sewer schemes, hygiene takes on new dimensions as faith, urban growth, and public works converge. When you embark on a pilgrimage, be it to Canterbury, Santiago de Compostela, or the Holy Land, you prepare meticulously, travel cloak and tunic. You wear layered clothing to insulate against cold night air, but to allow peeling off sweaty layers in heat. Each garment is boiled beforehand in lye soap if possible, then air-dried in the sun. Portable wash kit. A small leather pouch holds a tin cup, a handful of soap shards, and a linen cloth. At each hostel or stream, you dip, lather, and dry, cherishing the crisp feel of clean skin. Herbal sachets. Rosemary, mint, and rue, carried in a satchel, not only mask odors, but also ward off fleas that hitch rides on your cloak. Despite your best efforts, pilgrimage roads teem with mud, dust, and wayward animals. You alternate between dusty deserts and rain-soaked bogs, scrubbing only when the chance arises. But the promise of spiritual cleansing outweighs any physical grime. Pilgrim hostels, maintained by monastic orders, range from austere dormitories to modest inns. In both, communal washing areas consist of stone basins, fed by nearby springs through simple aqueducts. These basins offer running water, luxury in many regions. You wash your face and hands before meals, whispering prayers of thanks. Chamber pots. Hidden under straw mats, these pots are emptied at dawn by hostel servants into cesspits. The work is odious, but regulated. Pots are collected each morning, preventing overflows and night soil left in beds. Linens and turnover. Some well-funded hostels change bed linens weekly, airing mattresses in the courtyard. You slip between fresh sheets and almost weep at their crisp whiteness. Fellow pilgrims share towel cloth sparingly, 1 per 10 travellers, so rinsed rags hang on hooks, clacking together in the breeze. You guard your towel like gold and rinse it discreetly at night, hoping no one notices. Later, as towns swell into cities, authorities grapple with waste management and clean water supply. Early aqueducts and wells. City councils dig deeper wells and, where geography allows, route spring water through wood-lined channels into public fountains. Citizens fill jugs for cooking and drinking, reducing reliance on potentially contaminated rivers. Wells are fenced, and no dunging signs erected within a 40-pace radius to protect water quality. Street cleaning ordinances. Guilds and city officials decree that streets be swept daily before sunrise. Sweepers, often the poor or discharged soldiers, use straw brooms to push debris into gutters. At the end of each week, a bucket brigade empties gutter contents into carts that cart away filth beyond city walls. While not perfect, these measures reduce pest breeding grounds. Privy innovations. Communal latrines evolve from simple pits to brick-lined vaults beneath public markets and taverns. Vaults feature stone seats with drainage channels that lead to cesspits. Some innovative towns channel these outfalls into nearby rivers, questionably hygienic by modern standards, but a step above open drains in the streets. In a few advanced cities, London, Paris and Venice, rudimentary sewer tunnels snake beneath streets. Cesspit connections. Privies and guild houses tap into wooden-lined tunnels that slope toward larger culverts. During high tide or seasonal floods, valves prevent backflow, though failures still send foul water into basements. Maintenance crews. Municipal labourers, called gong farmers in England, descend into darkness with lanterns and hooks to clear blockages. It's a dangerous job. Methane pockets and collapsing timber threaten life, but they keep the city's underbelly moving. Storm drains. Simple stone channels curb rainwater runoff, preventing muddy torrents in busy markets. Citizens pitch in. Rain gutters on roofs divert water into street drains, reducing pooling and mudslides. Though sewers rarely carry household grey water, they mark a pivotal shift. Cities acknowledging waste as a public concern, not just a private nuisance. City markets, however, still bristle with risk. Fish and meat quarters. Authorities designate specific blocks for butchers and fishmongers, complete with water troughs for cleaning stalls. Weekly inspections check for spoilage. Rotting carcasses earn hefty fines and public shaming. Spice and herb licensing. To guard against adulteration, spice sellers must register their wares. Inspectors test samples for bulking agents, sand in pepper, chalk in cinnamon. Clean spices ensure preserved foods remain edible longer. Street vendors. Regulations require wheeled carts to carry waste buckets. Vendors must present clean utensils daily or risk closure. Enforcement is haphazard but evolving. These rules curb the worst abuses and signal an emerging understanding. Regulation and inspection improve public health. Some monastic communities also integrate sanitation into their rule. Cistercians. The Cistercian rule mandates cold water baths thrice weekly, hands, faces, and feet only. they build double-layered stone latrines over running water, ensuring constant flushing and minimal odours. Benedictines. Bannister led to the phrase, "Wash your hands, I pray," part of the Benedictine antiphon before meals. They maintain separate septs for sick brothers, isolating contagious members to prevent outbreaks. Franciscans. Vows of poverty limit luxuries, yet Franciscan friaries often feature herb gardens, supplying fresh rosemary and thyme for both cooking and fumigating dormitories. Monasteries become oases of relative cleanliness, drawing locals to observe and sometimes adopt their methods. In the swirl of pilgrims, merchants, and monks, medieval Europe slowly coalesces around shared notions of cleanliness. Public water supplies, street maintenance, and sewers may be crude, but they represent collective action. Pilgrimage hostels foster communal rituals of washing. Urban edicts nudge citizens toward responsibility. Monastic orders exemplify disciplined hygiene. As you wander from cathedral steps to crowded bazaars, you see traces of this transformation. A child dips her hands in a fountain before prayers. A street sweeper cordons off an alley. A traveller discards stale food into a cart bound for the city outskirts. The world is no longer merely at the mercy of mud and miasma. It's learning to manage its filth. Next, we'll bring our narrative to a close, reflecting on the enduring legacy of these medieval hygiene crusades and how their messy, inventive spirit underpins our modern cleanliness standards. Medieval wells, aqueducts, and public fountains set the stage for today's taps and treatment plants. Picture that first public spring, guarded by signage forbidding dunging within 40 paces. A primitive zoning law born of necessity. Over centuries, such ordinances evolved into well fields, protected watersheds, and modern filtration systems. The impulse remains the same, to secure reliable, uncontaminated water, whether for baptismal rites or daily showers. Yet we sometimes forget the courage it took to demand clean springs in an age when clean meant not visibly foul. Today, we turn on a tap without a second thought. They once hauled buckets from communal wells. Remembering that journey inspires gratitude and humility when confronted with waterborne crises around the globe. The medieval chamber pot, emptied at dawn, might seem quaint truth, but it compelled early towns to confront human waste as a collective problem. Night soil collection gave way to cesspits and rudimentary sewers, which in turn became today's underground networks of pipes. We flush with abandon, confident our waste vanishes. They laboured under horses, carts, and bucket brigades, watching each night soil cart crawl toward pits beyond the city walls. Modern sanitation engineers stand on their shoulders. Each manhole cover, each drop of treated effluent, inherits that legacy of gong farmer grit and civic ordinance. Whenever a neighbourhood resists a new sewer line, it helps to recall that medieval towns wrestled with the same politics, and that public health demands collective will. The transition from ash and urine lye to super-scented bars of glycerin soap traces a path of chemistry and culture. Medieval fullers hammered cloth in vats of lye. Guild bakers fined scofflaws who skipped hand-washing. Monks dipped fingers in troughs before meals. These customs seeded our modern hand hygiene campaigns. Today's antibacterial foams and dispensers might feel futuristic, yet they answer the same primal question. How do we stay well in a world teeming with unseen threats? The answer began with monks and midwives, with apothecaries and launderers, each inventing small rituals that scaled into grand movements. From bone combs to electric razors, personal grooming has always balanced necessity and vanity. Lice-comb flicks, eyebrow plucking with antler tweezers, leather scraper toothpicks, these early tools affirmed that looking and feeling clean mattered. They believed nakedness invited sin. We suspect it invites microbes. But both attitudes underscore a universal truth. Humans crave physical comfort and social acceptance. Next time you buy a new toothbrush or a salon appointment, take a moment to consider those medieval predecessors. Twig chewers and leech dabblers, self-conscious about body odor and breath. Their quirky gadgets remind us that our trimmers and toners carry on an ancient quest to present our best face to the world. No medieval doctor knew of bacteria, yet they developed quarantines, fumigations, and social distance edicts during plagues. City-state decrees banning foreign ships lingered into Renaissance quarantine stations. Today's pandemic protocols, masking, distancing, isolating, are direct descendants of those crude but effective measures. Their rationale was miasma. Ours is microbial. The core idea remains: communities must cooperate to contain invisible threats. History also warns of excesses, flagellant processions that spread contagion, over-reliance on fumigation that burned clothing, witch hunts blaming sin for sickness. Our modern balance, evidence-based guidelines tempered by social respect, steers clear of superstition, but acknowledges that fear and stigma can be as harmful as germs. The medieval world improvised with what it had: ash for soap, wine for antiseptic, pumice for exfoliation, pigeons for polish. That spirit of creativity persists in today's low-resource settings, where communities innovate solutions: solar disinfection, biodegradable wet wipes, community-built latrines, just as their ancestors did. Moreover, modern design owes much to the medieval guild's standards building. When butchers agreed to rinse cleavers in running water, they prefigured today's food safety regulations. When tanners experimented with alum, they pioneered chemical processes that still underpin dye fixation. Engineers, artisans, and regulators alike inherit that lineage. As we close this journey, one truth stands clear: hygiene is not merely about soap and water. It's a mirror of human ingenuity, fear, belief, and cooperation. From the thatched hut of a midwife to the lofty vaults of a cathedral, from the crowded guild hall to the bustling medieval street, people grappled with dirt, disease, and dignity, often in equal measure. Modern plumbing, pharmaceuticals, and public health infrastructures rest on medieval foundations, on the lessons learned in smoky bathhouses, plague-ravaged towns, and monastic wash-troughs. Our world may gleam with stainless steel and run clear with filtered water, but every tap and toilet is part of a continuum stretching back to those early pioneers of cleanliness. So next time you lather up, change your sheets, or wash your hands, remember, you're enacting a ritual 12 centuries old. You stand at the end of a muddy road paved with ashes and urine, with stones engraved by peace-weary sewers, and lanterns swung over cesspits. Take a moment, and perhaps a silent thanks, for the messy, miraculous arc of human hygiene, from medieval haze to modern haze-free showers. Thank you for coming on this journey with me tonight. If you enjoyed this story, I'd appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and maybe even comment on other places you would like to visit, and I'll try and make it happen. May sound sleep and beautiful dreams come to you tonight, my friend. You deserve it.